think we're good.
Yeah,
I think we're live, man. I
nice.
think this is
Close
it.
my distractions out here.
Hell yeah. What's going on? All right, y'all. What's up? Welcome to the Design Critics Podcast, episode 2. We are so glad to be back. It's been a wild month since we did the first episode.
Too long, too long.
Too long. It was mad glitchy.
Yeah, first one with growing pains, growing pains.
Right, that's all right. That's how it starts off. Sometimes the pilot, sometimes like the most exciting for the strangest reasons. But so
I don't think that echo made it too exciting.
yeah, speaking of echo, I'm gonna go ahead and fix that right now because I told myself I was gonna wear headphones during
Uh,
this because there's probably still an echo as we speak, and now it's gone.
nice.
The echo is gone. We're officially playing through the headphones. And oh, let me go ahead and turn our video on here. Boom. Oh, it's beautiful.
Nice.
Are you uh do you have the stream up on your end, Scott?
Oh, you know what? No, but I can real quick.
Yeah, man. You'll see our new look, man. You got a nice little frame to showcase your amazing thoughts and whatnot and your guitars.
Oh, there it is. Let's see. Yeah, so I see it's up there. Looks like it goes back and forth between the two of us talking.
Mhm. Good old Zoom doing all the hard work for us.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. All right, cool. So yes, we are the Design Critics. I'm Ray Mills. I'm a product designer and like a Twitch dude, and I play a lot of video games, and I am into anime stuff. I just bought that cool bag. Y'all can't see it if you're listening to the podcast, but it's a Gretzko. Shout out to her. That's my spirit animal, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess that's me. And then I'm here joined by my friend who can introduce himself as well.
Yeah, I'm Scott Gerstle, and I'm a user experience designer by trade. Um, been doing that for a number of years, and I've got a bunch of other hobbies too. There's some behind me. Got bicycles and cars, and I play some video games too. Dabble with music, making music, and yeah, there I am.
There he is. Yeah, man. Captain Tidbit, what's going on, man? How are you? You're not sure who? One of these dudes streams. Oh yeah. Oh yo, you know what? Actually, I've been trying to get Scott to start streaming for a while. He hasn't made the big jump yet, but um,
Now I can never get on a steady schedule of it.
it's hard, man. But schedules are kind of overrated. So long as you just do it consistently ish, then you're usually good.
Yeah, it's why I enjoyed starting the YouTube channel. Is it's a little more, post that up when I get a chance rather than like be beholden to being live.
What's your YouTube channel?
It is Toy Box Garage, 3 words.
Yes, Toy Box Garage. Yo, you should go check that out, Captain Tidbit. Yo, shout out to the lighting. Yo, we were actually talking about Scott's lighting earlier. He was telling me how. Well, I mean, if you want to go into that's actually
Well, I
hilarious.
just saying, I'm just sitting at my desk that I do, that I do work at, and yeah, lighting's not usually a primary concern when I'm on Zoom calls for work. I don't care, it's like we're trying to get work done. For something like this, yeah, lighting's a little more tricky, so I got to work on that. I'll work on that for next
Oh
time.
man, it looks all right. It looks all right. But yeah, welcome to Twitch chat, man. We shoot from the hip, so don't be scared to fire back. Captain Tidbit though, that's one of my guys. Yo, thank you for joining us, man. Hopefully you'll enjoy the conversation that we have going on here. We got a lot of interesting stuff that we were going to talk about. You weren't here for the last one, were you? Right. See, yo, and if you think about like how uh some of these other stream guys, like their stuff looks freaking terrible. Actually, I was streaming last week just from my PlayStation, just using a PlayStation camera, and it was like outside. You couldn't even see my face. It's like you gotta do it work sometimes. But yeah, man. So Scott, man, what's new in your world, man? How you doing today?
Whew, yeah, doing all right. Uh, just kind of getting through the week. got a good getting a lot of work done. Got a lot of different projects going on at work, and taking on working on different products. So that's always interesting. Is like juggling different products. So there's a lot of context switching um, that's going on there, and then one of those products, is picking up someone else's work. Like we had a designer that left, and so I'm picking up that work, and then it's brings a bunch of interesting challenges to jump into a team that somebody else has been working with. Because everybody works in their own ways and has their own way of communicating and handing off work and things like that. So that's one aspect that makes it kind of interesting. The other bit is like picking up their actual work, the actual design artifacts, getting into their design files, and like, I understand everybody's got a different way of working. Some people do more grouping and naming of groups and all that stuff. They're a little more neat and tidy about stuff, and other people a little more loose. But sometimes you pick up a design file and you're like, how did this person even have a job?
Yo, it's rough, dude.
Oh,
Especially when you gotta go back and like you gotta fix the stuff that was so like obviously broken. But it's like harder to fix now that, it's been in there for months, and, everybody kind of had to work with it. And so now to go back and fix it, you got to kind of work backwards in a sense.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll tell you, like, one of the complaints that this person had when they were with the company was that the developers could never build what they designed. It was constantly going back and forth with the development team, saying, "Why can't you just build? Here's my design. Why can't you just make it look like that? Why is it so off all the time?" And not, lo and behold, I get into this file and none of it's to scale. Like,
None of it is to scale.
it's not to scale. Like, you want text to be 14 pixels high. Well, in your file, it should be 14 pixels high. And so, but in this file, it was like 11. And everything was scaled down. So you could never, one of the best things about Adobe XD are those developer links, man. Sending a developer that you just send them a link and they click through all those different elements on the page and they get all the specs for the elements. All the box sizes, drop shadows, text styling, everything, hex codes for color, everything. It's all there. It'll even give you some of that CSS.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely.
Yo, so like, why is that important, right? Like, so what do you do every day at work, and like, why does that stuff need to be like the way it is for your job to work out?
Yeah. So that is important because I can hand that link to a developer. They can look at that. They can click through all that stuff, and they can say, "Oh, this button is supposed to be 32 pixels high by 50 pixels wide, and the font that's inside the button is supposed to be, 14-point Roboto bold in whatever the color is."
Mm-hmm.
Cool. They can make that. They make that button that component. It's exactly the way it was in the design. In this piece of work that I picked up from another designer, because those things weren't to scale, that designer can never ever take that file they were working in and hand it to a development team that's writing code and have them just sort of translate it directly. There's always going to be some interpolation that has to be done.
Yep.
So the crazy thing to me is that person then was doing double work because they're creating this design file that, even though the things on the page are proportional, they're not actually one-to-one to what the development team is building. So they go through the trouble to make things proportional, and then they have to turn around and talk to the development team and tell the development team how to make things proportional, even though they could have just done it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It's nutty. So I had to get in the file and just kind of resize everything, which is fine. It's part of the job.
Mm-hmm.
Is what it is. And I'll tell you, when I handed that file, I handed that link to the product manager, and this product manager was like, "Yes,
really?
The developers are gonna love this. This is amazing."
Really?
Yeah.
So do you think it'll actually will that actually make getting all that stuff like will you be able to retrofit like all of that new structure in with what's there based on like all of your new files that you're giving them now?
Yeah. So it'll take time to go through some of the old stuff and resize it, but it's only going to have to be done as needed. Like I'm not going to go redo all these files for things that they've already built.
Right.
It's already built.
Right.
So moving forward, though, I can start taking the design artifacts that I used for this and start, pulling pieces out and start building new stuff. So as they need new things, it can all follow this, what is ultimately our our system, our procedure for the life cycle of, design through development. So
Right.
we're standardizing all that stuff. And so now, like now that this particular designer is no longer at the company, we now have, all of our designers and all of our development teams working in the same way, and that it's going to make things so much easier for that particular team in specific, right? They'll be super pleased about that.
Hell yeah. Yo, check this out. So Captain Tidbit says, Roboto is the good old I didn't choose a font.
Isn't that Tahoma?
Right. Or is it Helvetica?
Oh yeah, I mean yeah, Helvetica is the. I mean nobody created a documentary about Roboto.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yo, Lexadel, what's going on with you? How are you? Yo, I wanted to bring that up. I thought that was an interesting point, Scott, considering the work that we did, or in the work actually that you do now, and I guess with UX design in general, uh, a font like Roboto or Arial, or maybe I would say Roboto and Helvetica, especially Helvetica, right? Um, why those fonts prevail so much, um, especially like when it comes to, I don't know, anything that you have to like, read and stare at for multiple hours a day. Um, People go to those fonts because they're so accessible. Um, in the context of your work, Scott, I was wondering if you could, I guess, give a little background about why Roboto is such a good font. Like, because we actually decided to use that font when we worked there, and we just like when we started
Yeah,
kind of taking the interfaces that we were working on in a new direction. Of all the
yeah.
fonts we could have chosen, we landed there.
I mean Roboto and Helvetica work. They both work for a lot of the same reasons, which is they they scale well and they're easy to read. And they work well at different resolutions and different sizes on different screen types and in print and everything, right? So and then Roboto is a font that was designed for mobile use, right? So it was designed to work well on small screens and in different sizes and different weights, um, and all that falls into usability and accessibility. So I mean that's why we end up using that particular font was, um, I felt like was because it was an easy standard that scales well to all of our use cases.
Mm-hmm. I use Roboto for all like if I'm doing like wireframe work, um, I'll end up using Roboto, and sometimes I'll just stick with it because it just works for everything.
It does. I do sometimes get a little sick of seeing it because it sometimes it can look the letter they can look a little tall. Sometimes like using some fonts that kind of spread things out a little bit more, give them a little more space. But it like I said, it's a usability thing, right? It's easy to read,
Mm-hmm.
so it works. It works.
It just works for so much. Like mixing fonts, like when you have to look for different fonts, there are so many different things you have to take in consideration. Like, I guess it depends on what you're using the font for, right? Like, a lot of our work was pretty much interface work. It was something that people had to stare at, interact with, read multiple hours a day, right? And so, like,
Web applications, yeah.
right, yep. And so, like, the last thing you want to do is exhaust people or get in their way with a decision that you kind of made, like, I guess in the context of our old work, or I guess your work, and maybe probably more than likely my work in the future, enterprise work, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like it's work that is reaching like a large amount of people for the sake of getting a job done or, you know, getting some kind of service done. And so
Right.
the things that they're more concerned about are like, you know, whether or not, you know, this multi-$1,000 product can, you know, inventory all of their stuff, or, you know, send out, you know, mailing lists with like all of this detail on it in a way that, you know, all this extra stuff, right? Like they don't really care about, you know, how, you know, they don't really care about your artistic vision. They're just like, stay out of my way, right? Like just let me
Well,
get my
right,
job
because
done.
if someone looks at a page and goes, "Wow, that's a really cool looking title,"
Whew.
that's distracting from all the data that they're supposed to be paying attention to, right?
That hurts. Oh, that hurts to hear, man. That I like I've learned that from like testing it at like at, you know, at our last job, man. Like they would, you know, we'd spend all this time coming up with this thing, and we're like, yeah, so what did you think? And then they'll be like, well, it looks really cool. And you're like, well, okay, but like because you know there's a but, like there's something else that's you know, we missed something, or they missed something, you know, like maybe they missed a big idea, or like, you know, the big aha moment that the thing was supposed to sell.
Right, because goal number one is always to solve their problem.
Mhm.
You know, like they come to work, they've got problems that need solving, right? Whatever it is. And if you're not solving that problem in the best way possible, it doesn't matter how good it looks. I still want to throw it across the room if it doesn't do what I need it to do.
would you um would you feel that same way if it were Comic Sans?
I mean, you know, again, I come from I come from not a graphic or visual design background. So like my focus is always usability. Not always, right? I got it's got to look good too because it has to look like quality product. But you know, if there's a place for Comic Sans, you can get in there and it gets a chuckle out of somebody or whatever and makes people happy. Do it.
Yo, did you hear that, chat? We just got a case for Comic Sans. Are we out here or not? That's pretty tight, right? I
There's
love
always a
Comic
case
Sans.
for Comic Sans somewhere, somewhere.
I agree.
Probably
What's
not
up?
my day-to-day work, but somewhere.
What's up with people trying to stamp out Comic Sans?
I don't know. Is it the easiest thing to read though when you're trying to parse through a lot of data?
I mean, that's a good point.
And then just gonna go back to Helvetica and be like, oh well, you know, it works. It's easy.
Yeah, or like Tahoma, or like Times New Roman.
Yeah. Oh, not Times New Roman. Get out of here with that. Take your serif fonts and go pound.
Yeah. Yo, you know what? Serif fonts have a place though. Like,
I know in the print world.
yep. It's interesting. The like, as soon as I like we started saying that, I went to like, you know, the New York Times or like Washington Post, um, literally like straight up journalism websites. Like, it still looks good, man. Like all white background, all black text, just the right font size. You know, it'll make an article feel really important.
Yeah, man. You know what else I had to fix in that file that I picked up from another designer? Was all the black text on white background.
Woo!
White background. Man, it was like I'll show you what that was like. It was like this.
Oh yeah, here we go. Here we go.
I couldn't handle it, man. So I went with a lot of grays. That's how you know I'm a designer.
Yo, gray. Shout out to gray, man. I feel like black and white as like a color and an interface. Like those are colors that you have to use with intent because they're heavy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, it's a balance, right? Because and then you have to take accessibility into account too, right? Our products have to be used by people of all of all varying abilities. Um, so, you know, we can't use too light a gray, even though, man, some of those light grays look so good on some lighter background. But
Mm-hmm.
if it's not enough contrast, it's not going to pass accessibility tests, and you got to keep that. You got to keep it contrasty,
Yep.
but just not black on white. That's just no, no.
But you know what I like though? White on black.
Mm-hmm.
And you know
But,
why? I used to not do it. when I was in college, my design teacher pretty much he was like, you never use all black or all white. Like if it's all zeros or all F's, the hex code, run away. Like just don't do it. And and so I was on a high horse about that a little bit. And so I got my Google Pixel, and I got that OLED screen,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and that changed everything, man. And so um, I find myself using like black all the time, like for different reasons. Like I hardly ever like I'll use like a dark black, like I'll use black to like maybe like as a shadow effect or something like that. But I'll absolutely use it because like when all you can see is like that text on the screen, man, the contrast is perfect and it saves your battery.
Yeah, yeah. OLED screens and like real dark mode. Woo,
Mm-hmm. It's a
that
beautiful
stuff's
thing, man.
rough. But yeah, I'll take and dark mode's another thing, man. Like I know that it's probably not like I've seen some solid arguments that for dark mode being garbage. And I understand in some that there are some logical reasons for it, but at the end of the day, dark mode all the things.
What are
I live,
some like what
I
are
live in
some
dark
I use light mode occasionally on some things, usually on apps that I want to stick out, but like only with intent. Like I usually do dark mode. But what are some cases you think that like for someone that thinks dark mode is trash, why would you think so? Why would you think they would think so?
mode because I think it ends up. I think a lot of times it ends up being too contrasty, um, and so if you're reading a lot of text, that can be a little tough on the eyes. I mean, you ever look away from a screen of text and you get you can still see the lines of text in front of you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's an issue. And then like I notice it when I use like my the browsers are in dark mode. The browser tabs, your active tab has a shadow behind the active tab to make it kind of stick out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of hard to see behind in dark mode. You don't see those. It's harder to see layers in dark mode.
Oh yeah, you're definitely right about that. Yep.
So, I mean, you take the good with the bad, though. Like I said, I'll dark mode all the things.
Yep. I agree, especially considering like I wonder if that has anything to do with just like PC like device nerd tech culture in general, and like you know a lot of people use these devices like in dimly lit areas, and
Mm-hmm.
especially when like if you're like a content creator or like an artist or something, a writer, or I don't know, even if you just are reading articles or whatever, like so much of that time is spent doing that in the dark or something that's kind of sensitive to like super bright lights. Like who wants like super bright lights all up in their face all the time? Like nobody wants that.
Yeah, I mean, and our phones all have night modes now with to take the blue out, and so that helps a lot for looking at a bright screen in a dark room, dark space. Um, and I know, like I'm sitting here at my desk, right? I've got this 34-inch ultra wide monitor. If I have white spanned across that monitor, it's like blinding.
Right.
Um, in the day, it's not so bad because there's a window on the other side of my monitor, so you got a bright room. But in the dark, damn, it's bright.
You know what? Like, I wonder if like light modes weren't so like offensively bright white. Like, if we just kind of, how like with people like a really solid dark mode doesn't use black, right? It
Mm-hmm.
uses soft grays or dark grays. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's surprising you don't see that more in light modes. Like light modes just have to use white. Like it's so fucking bright.
Yeah, like Google went that way with their big Gmail update that came out a little while back. It was everything just went stark white. I'm like, I get it. It like from a design standpoint, it looks nice. It's crisp. It's clean. It's when you have that stark white, it's easy to throw a pop of color somewhere and really grab someone's attention for something in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But damn, it's bright. Yeah, Captain Tidbit said eyeball burning. God
Yeah.
damn right.
Yo, I got a question for you. Speaking of ultra wide, yo, so I have a 1080p ultra wide. Um, Scott has a 1440p ultra wide.
Mhm.
4K or ultra wide?
I'll take ultrawide all day long.
Really?
I mean, first of all, it's yeah. First of all, 1440 ultra wide. That's a lot of
That's
pixels.
so many pixels.
Yeah, man. It I've got that. I get the 1080 graphics card, and it pushes that thing hard.
Really?
Yeah. Um, yeah. There's some things that if I were running like a standard 1080 screen, I would get frame rates like for days. But on 1440 across 3440, ooh, it's a lot of pixels
It
for that
pushes it
one
hard.
graphics card to push. Yeah. But with that being said, it's like I don't know because you run the same problem right with 4K. Is you pushing a lot of pixels, so you need a lot of graphical horsepower to get really high frame rates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're shooting for high frame rates, which if you're gaming on it, you are.
Yes, indeed.
Um, so for gaming, I mean, I guess maybe 4K is better for gaming. I don't know.
Mm.
If you've got enough graphical horsepower to push the frame rates, maybe 4K is better, just the resolution, and you can get a nice big monitor. Um, but when it comes to work and design, I'll take the ultra wide over the 4K any day.
Why is that though? Because 4K is still more pixels.
Yeah, but I'll tell you why. For me, it's that I can split the screen. I can snap, particularly in Windows, because Windows has the snapping thing dialed in so beautifully. So I can grab a browser, click it over to the one side. I grab my design, XD, clip it over to the left, and then I just grab the line in the middle and slide it to however I want that proportioned, and bam, I've got two things going on, so I can have like some reference material, some documents or whatever, and then my the file I'm working with taking up the majority of the screen,
Mm-hmm.
and I got those things there. Or I would say like if I'm just browsing, I've got like Facebook open on one side and YouTube open on the other, right? And I can just, or I can be reading some blog about cars, and then having a YouTube video running on the other side. So it's like having two monitors, but without any of the bezel bullshit. I mean that's why I like it anyway. Not,
Yeah,
everybody's got their own opinions, but that's why I like it.
that makes sense. Like, because I don't know what it is. I like the only time I really got the chance to use a 4K monitor was at like work, um,
Hmm.
and it's like sometimes it's almost overwhelming, right? Like trying to manage that amount of like horizontal space, um, as far as like I don't know. It's weird. Like when you feel like you have two different monitors, the way you work and process like your workspace is just totally different.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess that's the thing with the like my 4K monitor at work is you have all of this real estate, but well, first of all, you have to scale your UI because you can't run it natively at 4K. It's too damn small.
Mm-hmm.
Can't read anything. So you have to scale the UI for starters. So that's already you're losing some like real estate benefit,
Hmm.
and then you have your 21 to or not 21, whatever it is, the aspect ratio of usual monitors. Not blanking.
Oh, 16:9.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 16, right, 16:9. So you have 16 by 9, and there's no like good split because then if you run things side by side, they're a little too narrow, and like with design software, you're going full screen anyway, um, so you just need real estate. And let's face it, you have a lot more peripheral vision this way than you do this way.
Mm-hmm.
So why not have a nice wide mount?
Yep. And it curves like I mean,
The curve is all right.
yeah. I was gonna say yeah, man. Speaking from like oh god, like oh you know what I was thinking of that monitor that's like there's this 1080p monitor that's like super massive hyper ultra wide. Like, have you
Hmm.
seen it?
Yeah. I've seen them. They're like two of these things, two of what I've got stacked next to each other.
They're 1080p.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. And
No.
so it just pushes those frame rates. I have a question for you. So, as far as video games go,
Yeah.
um, frame rate or image quality?
Oh, yeah, man. It's a balancing act. I just went through this with Red Dead Redemption 2 because that's such a beautiful game. Like, I can't jack it all the way up to max settings because the 1080 just won't do it, right? So I'm like, all right, what can I, what can I, so now I play the balancing act. What can I knock down while still having it look amazing and getting my frame rates? And like, how low a frame rate am I willing to accept for that type of game? And then, what kind of visual quality am I willing to accept?
What
It's,
is that
it's,
lowest frame rate?
um, I mean, for that kind of game, like 60.
Okay.
I don't really fall below 60.
Yo, playing cinematic mode. That's hilarious. Red Dead playing cinematic mode, 24 frames. Lock it.
No, no. I don't even honestly. I don't even like 24 frames in movies. Yeah, cinematic, like, because every time. And here's, I don't know. Maybe this is
Nah, man, let's hear it.
the rough opinion to try to defend. But when you get when you get a panning shot, right, with when there's a lot of detail in the scenery, and you get a panning shot,
Mhm.
you can't see shit.
Yep.
It's just a big ass blur. And I know that like I went and saw The Hobbit when they released The Hobbit, and they released that in 60 frames,
Mhm.
and it looked weird, man. It's because they're it's that soap opera effect, but the thing is, it's actually just more realistic, and we're not used to seeing movies that way.
Hmm.
So our brains aren't programmed to take in all that information when watching a movie, and it makes the filmmakers have to work harder to make their fantasy believable when we're getting twice as much information sent to our eyeballs.
That's interesting.
Because when you run 24 frames per second, you're asking our brains to fill in information that's not there.
That's true. There's I can't remember what well I think that's true. I agree with that. There's this movie that Will Smith made, and I think it was this movie where it's like him from like the past and like him in the future, and it's like two of him pretty much, and like one's really young.
Oh, yeah, I read about that. I haven't seen it, but I read about
Yeah, I read a few articles about like so they actually I think they did like a full 60 frame per second movie,
it.
um
Hmm.
and it didn't review very well, and they talked about how like I guess it felt unnatural, like they could see so much of like the fact that it was acting, like it felt
Right, right.
like there was just so there was so much new information that we weren't used to having to process.
Yeah, yeah.
um and it makes me wonder, like, so when I first read that, it was just like, damn, okay, well, maybe 24 frames per second is better for movies. But listening to you say it got me thinking now, like, maybe if that were just the standard going forward, I wonder what effect that would have on movie makers and like uh not artists but actors, yeah, and like directors and like CGI artists and whatnot. Like, it would probably totally change the way people make movies.
Yeah, I think it would because, like I said, it. I think it's a lot harder when you're doing a movie, which is fake, it's fantasy, right? It's a lot harder to make it believable when you provide twice as much visual information. You can't hide things.
You see my face popping up? It's like it can hear me nodding. You see that shit? That's fucking hilarious. There's a setting that I put on Zoom that I think that's the reason why it's doing that. I'm gonna go find out. That's fucking hilarious though. But yeah, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
Oh, no, I think I completed my thought there. Just that
There we go.
it's hard to make. Yeah, it's hard to use 60 frames per second to make a fantasy world look real because of all that extra information you're taking. It's just what you were saying, you know. And it's like you go watch a YouTube video that's, whether it's 1080p or 4K, whatever, but running at 60 frames per second.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch like, um, take my channel for example, right? It's driving, so camera's mounted on my head here, watching me drive on a racetrack. So it doesn't look weird, doesn't look fake, doesn't look like a soap opera. Well, why not? And it's because all that action is 100% real.
Right.
There's no extra information your brain needs to fill in. So so it works, right? Um, but when you have people acting and they're actors, and I don't know. That's my take on it. I don't know if that's actually, I don't know if that holds water, but
No, I think that's interesting though. I'm gonna turn that setting back on. So what that thing was doing was like, this makes me want to bring up RTX voice. Like, okay.
okay.
So yeah, so I have there's a setting on Zoom, right? And it says to spotlight my video whenever I speak, which actually is necessary in order for this kind of video podcasting to work. Like, so um and so I didn't realize that it didn't do that by default. But RTX voice, what it's supposed to do is anything that's not me, it's supposed to just like, kill out. And so I use RTX voice. I've gotten into the habit of using RTX voice a lot when I'm streaming, or actually, I mean, all the time when I'm streaming. I'll just kind of have it on by default. But it was cool. Like, the fact that I can even use RTX voice is really fucking cool, right? Because I don't even have an RTX video card. I have a GTX 1080, and so you kind of have to jump through some hoops to get RTX voice working on non-RTX cards. It's actually kind of simple if you know where to like get the information. It's like a PC Gamer article that like pretty much directs you right to like this file that becomes available when you try to install it. And installer pretty much is like, hey, you don't have an RTX card, you can't do this. It like extracts all these files onto like your hard drive, and one of those files is like a notepad file that you can get into, and there's a value in there that specifically looks for RTX cards, and you just simply delete it and then save the file and then run the installer again, and it works perfectly fine. And so shout out to whoever found that. And like, oh, and Nvidia's actually aware of that loophole, and they don't even care. They're just like, well, we don't support it, good luck. So
right, it's like you can try out ray tracing on your GTX card.
well, they actually unlocked it. Like, oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, and like, I guess I hadn't even thought about it that way, because like with ray tracing, they just kind of accepted that like people want to do it, so screw it, let them have it. And like, you don't have to jump through any bells and whistles to get access to it. You'll just have really terrible frame rates. Yeah. But like with RTX voice, I was surprised to see that like they didn't just unlock it like for everybody, and I think that's because they still want to use it as a selling point, which like I guess like there's no performance loss from me using RTX voice on my video card, right? And so to just like have that feature be accessible on like like easily accessible on non-RTX cards effectively strips that whole selling point away. And so I get that, but I appreciate that they still make it available. But anyway, the point is like, so I used it, and it works, but it works too well. And so like I could have it on like be like on really aggressively, and if I like speak with like a nice monotone radio voice, then it'll sound great. But I don't speak with a really monotone radio voice. You know what I mean? Like I fucking I scream sometimes. Sometimes like I'll just like barely be like, I'll just like be mumbling or whatever, like just depending on my mood. And like it'll totally warble my voice. It'll just fucking lose it. And like, you can actually change how strong the RTX voice filters. So like if there's some sounds you want to get through, like some it'll let through, like maybe if I'm playing Tekken, it'll let through some of my arcade stick sounds. But like even still, like some of my favorite clips that I want to go back and look at, um, I will like be excited, or like, you know, even on, oh, there was like I was playing Call of Duty, and some dude, like me and my friend were like creeping up this stairway for like 30 or 45 seconds, and it was super suspenseful. And this dude eventually like saw me climbing up the stairs and shot me from like, you know, in between the stairs, and scared the fucking shit out of me, and I squealed. But RTX voice filtered it all out, and so I was like, well, you know, that clip's trash now. But but when we did our first episode of the Design Critics, it was not able to like detect that some of the audio was coming from the speakers, and so all that audio that was coming out of the speakers, like us talking, the microphone just ate it all up, and RTX didn't detect it at all. And I had it set to like 70% strength or something, like, so maybe 80, 75, 80 between there. But like same as I normally do, and it wasn't it like it, you know, the echo went through the whole entire episode. And so the, you know, it's some interesting software, but like I would like to see them fine tune it more, because it's a little robotic.
Well, maybe, right? You need to get that RTX card.
Yo, I mean, I was really thinking about it. That was one of the things that was gonna make me get it, and I'll still get it for ray tracing. Yo, Captain Tippett is like all 2 ray tracing games.
Yeah, but think about how good those two games will look.
Yo, they look so good. But you know what though? There are a surprising amount of ray tracing games out there. It's enough of them. Like, I mean, I play a lot of AAA games,
Mm-hmm.
and so like I love, like, you know, image quality and frame rates. Like, you know, that perfect balance. Like, if you can like if you can push those like super ultra settings that are like super futuristic, and get like, you know, 60 to 90 frames, man, like that's a big deal in my opinion. And like, I mean, let's see, like Tomb Raider has ray tracing, Call of Duty has ray tracing, there's 2 of them, Battlefield has ray tracing. I'm running out already. It really isn't a lot of them. But I'm here for it though. Like, it's here to stay. Like, you know, I think it's, people are adapting it faster than they adapted VR.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's nothing holding you back from ray tracing other than high horsepower hardware,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
That's
like,
true.
VR is a whole different ball game because, I mean, it's not just a video card. It's like you have to have a good video card. You have to have, you know, this hardware. You have to have the space that can accommodate you standing in your room flailing your arms around.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole, you know, that's a whole different. There are a lot more obstacles to overcome with making VR sort of, you know, mass market. Like, you know, you could sell everybody a gaming console that is capable of ray tracing, and eventually games will start being made that take advantage of that. Whereas you're not going to sell a VR setup to everybody that buys a console, because it's just unrealistic. For the space constraints alone are a huge hurdle for a lot of people.
Right. That's a good point. Oh man, speaking of space constraints, the next gen consoles are like spaceships, dude.
Oh, the new PlayStation.
Oh my god, they're huge.
Yeah, I saw that. You know, and like the PlayStation's standing upright. I mean, the Xbox is the cooler looking one, but I don't know. I kind of like the weirdness of the PlayStation.
Me too, man. They, you know what? I think they're both weird. Like, people made fun of how weird the Xbox is. Like, if you think about it, like, it's really weird in every sense of the word, right? Like last generation, and even like, I mean, maybe even through like the PlayStation 2, like the PlayStation, the Sony brand has always been sleek, modern, futuristic, like black svelte, like premium, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were self-contained, very like purposefully self-contained, right? Like PlayStation 3 was a very good example of that. Like the motherfuckers had a Spider-Man controller, or it was like the Spider-Man PlayStation font with like the boomerang controller. Like, you look like you can throw it and it'll come back to you, like, and like they went there and people they screamed about it, and Sony got scared, and then they kind of backtracked a little bit, and then we got the PlayStation 3, which was a hot mess. But like that's how we know PlayStation, right? And Xbox has always kind of been the strange one. But this time Xbox just does like a strange black cube that
Yeah, man. What's wrong with black box?
it's awesome. It's strange. It's
Yeah.
like it is like when you think about like I've been looking up a lot of like horror movies, right? And like the reason why horror movies are so like, interesting, like they're not horror movies aren't always like, oh my god, jump scare scary. Like sometimes they're just strange and you don't understand them. And you like that scene on The Shining, right? Where like, homegirl's running away from her husband, and then she goes up those stairs and she looks to her right, and that dude is getting head by that guy with the pig mask on, and she's just like, look, like what the fuck? Like, remember that shit? Like that of all the scenes in that movie, like that one, like that tilted me like Resident Evil, right? Because I was just like, why are you, like I just couldn't process it, right? Like Xbox, like going into this generation, they have just like, and Sony, for all intents and purposes, are like they're finally like they're doing some risky, unsafe stuff that I appreciate, but like Xbox went full strange. Like they kind of like haven't been focusing on exclusives. They've been opening their doors up to like all different consoles and different platforms, and not focusing so much on selling consoles so much as they have been selling their brand and their platform and like getting people access into that whole like ecosystem or whatever. But then you have like the Xbox Series X, which is for all intents and purposes a PC. Like
Right.
it has parts that you can take in and out. I think like it's
Oh yeah.
it's pretty modular. Like it's a PC, and people called it a big fucking refrigerator. It was just it's a big black cube. Like that's kind of creepy, right? Like, and it does all these things that consoles before it didn't really do. Like it just breaks all these rules, right? But then Sony comes around and out refrigerators the big refrigerator. And then they call that thing a fucking router. Like, and like the dev kit was like a V. Like, it's just fucking weird.
Oh, the dev kit one was super weird looking. It didn't even look like, I was like, I mean, it does, God. From an industrial design standpoint, I was like, you cannot possibly try to sell that thing.
Everyone thought it was fake. It's brilliant.
Yeah, at least the final version, it looks like it just looks like some alien ship in Halo or something.
Yeah, it looks like the future.
Yeah.
Like, man, I like people don't realize like this is why I think ray tracing is so fucking exciting. This is why I think the next generation of consoles is so fucking exciting. Like, I don't think people realize. Like, so I think that like 2015 to 2020 like was effectively we were effectively stepping into the future. Like I feel like things were happening so fast that nobody really realized it, but like the way social media took off, the way privacy started to kind of get questioned, VR started taking off, like all of these, everybody is like a phone is now kind of effectively an extension of your person. Like, it is like now everybody's in, we're stuck in that fucking house because there's a goddamn pandemic outside, and so now people are finding more things to do at home, like for all intents and purposes. Oh, and meanwhile, like phones are getting cheaper but they're getting fancier, right? And it's like, so now everybody has fancy phones, and like, and then there here comes ray tracing, right? Like, so ray tracing, I used to like, I would hear that term get thrown around a long time ago. I would spend time on Quake 2 forums, like finding out how to like, mod my games and like, make textures and models and stuff like that. Like I never really got into that stuff like the way other people did, but like, I was constantly modding my game. I was constantly finding ways to like, manipulate the game. And they were like, they would talk about how Quake 2, the way it handles lighting is like, if it could do ray tracing, it would be perfect because of the way Quake 2's or models or maps and models, like the way like they handled like lighting, but they were like, we would never achieve ray tracing in our lifetime. Like that is CG quality, like Toy Story. Like we'll never get that in our lifetime. Like this was like in like the early 2000s, maybe like the early 2000s. Like they're like we just won't see that in our lifetime. Like that's how people talked about that. Like it was just like it wasn't even a pipe dream. Like they were just like, forget about it. Like that's Jesus. Like,
and so here we are in the future.
Yes, we are here. Like, and so like it is like, and there aren't a lot of games out on it, right? But like just think about that for a second. Like Toy Story level quality lighting. Like, before that was impossible. We had to mimic it, and we had to find all these tricks. Like, and it's small stuff that we don't even think that we realize that we take for granted, right? Like, you can even look at like, like that mirror in my background, like, the whole idea of like, reflections on like a screen is like, any video game that's being rendered in real time that's not being ray traced, like it can't reflect anything that's not being visibly shown on the screen, and you don't even recognize that until like, you see, you look into a reflection and you can see a guy creeping up behind you, like, out of like, a window reflection, or like maybe the reflection out of your gun, or like,
Right. Yeah, it's not a specifically programmed mirror.
Yeah, it's like it's 100% like, and then like the way that's just like the reflections, not even to account like the lighting and how it like does the same stuff in real time, like, and it all that stuff's early right now, but we kind of aren't even supposed to be able to be doing that right now. If you like think about the way these guys were talking about it just like 10 or 15 years ago, like they were just like, not only is it in like, that's like maybe our kids can do it in the future. Like,
so if we're living in the future and our consoles look like the future, you know what doesn't look like the future? My living room.
Your living room?
Oh, no, because my living room just looks like a living room.
Yeah, man, but that's the beauty of it. You know what that reminds me of? Ready Player One.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
The book, actually.
Yeah.
I haven't finished it. I got maybe about halfway through it, but like the concept is interesting because it's like you are in like, so it's like it's set in the future, right? And the world's fucked. It's like post-apocalypse, right? Let me know if any of this sounds familiar. It's like it's post-apocalypse. There's like a huge wealth divide, and so like there's like ultra poor and there's ultra rich, and ultra rich get access to better education, that kind of thing, but like essentially everything's kind of shitty and slummy, and so most of the most civil parts of society happen in VR. In real life, people kind of live in like projects, but they're like stacks of like trailers, or like freight trailers that are like stacked on top of one another, and people live in them like trailers, and people have like extension cords and whatnot that route power into each of these places, and like they stack super high, like they're called stacks, and they like people don't normally go to the bottom of the stacks because a lot of crime happens there, but people go into this world to like get their education and like have their fun or whatever, but they can like, they're like uncharted parts of this world that they can go to and really mess their stuff up. But it reminds me a lot of kind of like it I don't know when the book was made, like maybe in like the 2000s or something, maybe even earlier than that, I don't know, but it draws a lot of parallels kind of to like the path that we're on now. Like I guess it talks about how like our the world at large, like social leaders kind of failed to steer us away from this kind of post-apocalypse, but we still have access to all this amazing technology, and so life goes on still. But like all of this interesting stuff happens, like literally like Monster Hunter level shit happens in the virtual reality world, and like people have like, they live their life as entire avatars, and they go to school as these avatars, and they make friends as these avatars, and they'll never meet these people ever in their lives. It's like straight up VR chat.
Right, right. It's kind of like, yeah. I mean, there's some parallels there to the Matrix, right? Like you're living inside this fabricated reality. Most of most of your existence, most of your consciousness exists inside this fabricated reality, and your physical self then just becomes a shell, just a battery, right? Like in the Matrix.
Yep. And it's like it's interesting. Like the Matrix comparison is interesting because like with the Matrix, like there's like there's either you are totally unaware that you are in the Matrix, or you're like hyper aware that you're in the Matrix, and you probably prefer that.
Right.
Um,
Right. Well, you make the choice, right? The two pills.
right, right. But with Ready Player One, everybody's hyper aware of the Matrix, and
Mm.
you can't stay in the Matrix. And in fact, your access to the Matrix, you have to buy into it. And if you don't have like if you don't have the best resources outside of the Matrix, then you're going to be cut off of the best parts of what's inside of the Matrix.
Oh, interesting.
It's
So
like
taking those social classes and bringing them inside the virtual world too.
right, yeah. It's like being stuck with a level 1 character,
Right. Right.
and all of your friends are like level 30 and level 40, and so they can go on risky adventures that you can't go on because you'll die. Pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, man. What's it? Second Life VR? I don't know. I haven't heard of that.
Yo, VR chat is nuts, dude. Like if you are ever just bored or curious, I highly recommend going on VR chat on Twitch and just seeing, like, just go there and just pop into a room with a bunch of people in it and just experience it.
Yo,
And
you remember the experience I told you I had with in what the heck was that? Arena VR.
oh, dude, man, I love this story, man. All right, you gotta share the crowd, please, because
Oh man, it's been a while, but basically just so Arena VR is like if you don't know what it is, right? It's like you float around in the you know spaceship type setting. You're floating around in zero gravity, and you pull on things to move around, or you have thrusters on your hands you can use to fly around, and you can go into these arenas and like the idea is to throw the disc, and it's like space basketball basically.
yeah, yeah.
Throw the disc into a box or whatever. And there's of course a big lobby area, so you can go to like the little training area, or go to I don't know, deck out your character's looks or whatever you want to do. But of course, when you're in this lobby area, you can interact with other people, and so the yeah, I was clearly new. It was my first time in this thing. I'm messing around, and someone's like, "Oh, hey, let me show you how to do this thing."
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. And they're like, "Yeah, just press this button and press that button or whatever it was." I can't remember exactly what they told me. So I go ahead and do it, and it restarts my whole shit. I was like, "Son of a bitch!" And I get back in, and I can hear this little kid just laughing his ass off. Got me, damn it, got me. Felt so old.
Yo, and didn't you like
That's
see
how it
him
goes.
like
That's how it goes.
what's that?
I said it's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, man, they get you sometimes, man, and like you know what, like you like you learn like in video games and in VR, like it's a doggy dog world, dude. Like kids, like they're Satan sometimes. Like you can't go easy on kids sometimes just because they're kids, because they'll catch you slipping. Like you gotta outsmart those little assholes sometimes. Like you just gotta get there, go there with them sometimes. Like hey, you shut up, kid. No, kid. How? No, you, kid. No, you. Like, because if you try to outsmart them, then they'll just out kid you, and then you'll just be the dumb adult arguing with a kid. Nobody wants that.
Hey man, grade school kids are the worst people. Yeah, I don't want to play games with grade school kids, man. I'm too old for that shit.
Yo, don't play Overwatch.
Oh god, that's part of the reason. I mean, Overwatch and pretty much every other first-person shooter is why I avoid those things in multiplayer, because I mean, first of all, I just get roasted. I am just a target. That's all. I'm a running. No, I'm not even good at that. I'm a shitty target. So, I just run around and get shot, and then yeah, then I get fucked with by little kids. I don't need that in my life.
Dude,
I,
my brother plays Rainbow Six Siege, and like I don't know what it is about my brother and how he plays, but like they always make fun of him. No, they don't make fun of him. They talk. So Rainbow Six Siege is mad fucking toxic. It's like it might be one of the most toxic games out right now. Like I don't know what it is about those guys. You know what? I know exactly what it is. It's because Rainbow Six Siege it's like super hardcore. Like, it's unforgiving, like straight up accidental one hit headshot through the wall and that dude didn't even know you were there and he pulled the trigger on accident and you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, it's hardcore.
yeah.
But like my brother, like they'll like if they don't like how you play, they'll message you and bully you, or they'll like team kill you. Like they'll just revolt against you. Like uh like they'll do these things where like everyone will choose like the same like class type, and if you don't choose the same class type as them, uh they'll just fucking kill you at the beginning of the match.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, and that's not the end of it. And then they vote you out.
Damn. Oh. And then, oh man, and what drives me nuts is like, then you got to figure out why the fuck did I get booted? What did I do wrong?
Yep. You gotta figure it out. Yeah, like while people are fucking cussing you out, and like my brother tells me, like they'll send them messages all the time, like, oh yeah, like oh you've been playing this for so long, and your KD so and so, like you're such a bot, you're trash, you're a scrub. And I was like, damn, they call people bots now? That's fucked up.
Jesus. So, so he must really fucking like that game in order to keep playing and put up with all that shit.
Oh, he loves it. He has religious experiences. Like he done had like people apologize to him because he like will just like kind of lecture them about how much of a piece of shit thing that was that they did, and like then they'll be like sending him game invites because they want to play with him, and then he'll just ignore them. It's like,
so wait, so they go full gamer trash on him, and then he turns around and just like brings it back to reality. He's like, yo man, that really hurt. I want you to know, like, what you did right there, it hurt me real deep inside, and that shouldn't happen. I'm here to play a game, like just like you, man, just like you.
That's exactly what he does, dude.
No. Oh god,
it's brilliant. Like I mean, it kindness is the best weapon sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes I can imagine.
I had a dude. I used to work at Lowe's. I had a dude like go off on me one day because like this old woman beat him to my line, and she had 2 items, or she had like this dude had like maybe 1 or 2 items, and this woman had more items, but she beat him to the line, and she turned out to be mad fucking slow, which I know was irritating. Like she's slow. Like I'm sorry, but like but this dude got mad as a motherfucker, and he went off, and like it's like, man, I don't get paid enough for this shit, man. Like I'm a fucking cashier. Like I promise you I don't want to be here, and fuck you. Like I promise. Like that's how I felt. But like I was I was professional, and I was just like, hey man, look, I'm sorry. I would have done the same thing for you if the tables were turned. She got here first. I apologize. Like, but it is what it is. We're here now. Like, what do you want me to do about it? Like, I'm sorry. That's life. I apologize. I'm sorry she took so long. Like,
I used to say that every person should have to work like a shitty service job for at least a year, so that they can build that empathy and know what it's like to serve other people and have to put up with like other people's bullshit all the time. It's like, it's crazy what people think is okay. I mean, you see it all the time. I mean, that's what the whole Karen thing is built on, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that guy actually came back and apologized to me.
Oh yeah.
Like, dude. Now there hadn't been too many situations at that job where I like had to walk away because and like, go pace around somewhere and scream for 30 minutes because I was so fucking pissed off. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of experiences like that at Lowe's. Like that was probably maybe the one of two. That might have even been the only one, but like, cause I had people like go off on me. Like one woman told me to like burn in hell, and like I asked her for her number to like in case she had a Milo's thing or she wanted, you know, if she needed to return something, what's her number? And then she gave me all sixes, and I was like, I'm sorry, ma'am, that number didn't work. And like you know, like I thought that was fucking hilarious, but like something about this guy, like he was just so like he wasn't like comically rude, he was just awful. And like it was just like, you know, this level of like it wasn't even entitlement as much as it was like road rage. Like dude was having a bad day clearly, and you know life just kind of caught him slipping, and here we were, you know, and like and he just kind of like he just turned into that guy. Like he just turned into that fucking guy. And you know I didn't match that energy because like I don't know, that at that moment that just wasn't what I was gonna do. But like I, you know, gave him the, you know, a humane Lowe's cashier experience because I'm a good person. And and then like a week later he came back and apologized. Like he just showed up at my line again and was like, "Hey man, like I want to apologize for the way I treated you the other day. I truly was having a really really shitty day, and I I don't know what got into me, and so I just want to offer you a formal apology, and I hope you have a great day." And I was like, "Oh, thank you, sir. Like that shit made my fucking day." And yeah, like
Yeah, man. I worked at bike shops, like bicycle shops, for like 7.5 years. I never experienced anything like that, where someone came back after giving me a hard time and apologized. Never got that. And I, you know, like we had such pride in, you know, always treating everybody like, you know, like this honored guest. And you know, there were some times I had one dude, like, he literally brought a bicycle to the store to be repaired, and the person that checked it in didn't see that the frame had a giant hole in it. Like, and so the mechanic, by the time the mechanic got to it, you know, a day later, like, oh, we can't work on this because it's unsafe. You know, we can't work on a thing and deliver it back in an unsafe condition. So we call the guy up, tell him, you know, you got to come get your thing. It's got a hole rubbed in it from something, like, who knows how that happened.
right.
And he comes in absolutely livid, like off the fucking hook, upset, angry, yelling, "I can't believe you did this to my bike. This is bullshit." And blah. I want to talk to the manager. Blah blah blah. Like, sir, I am the manager. You know?
Damn.
And all you can do is like, no, you know, I'm sorry you feel that way. You know, this is clearly, it was brought in. You know, try to explain the whole thing. Like, now I even took him in the back. I'm like, sir, I'll show you how we store the bike, so you can see that there's no possible way this could happen in our care. The bike was brought to us that way. "Oh, I'm not telling you, you're full of shit," and blah, blah. And then I was like, okay, we've done everything here. You're gonna have to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that guy definitely didn't come back. But you know, I've had other people, you know, like this one vile woman called me all sorts of names, and I was like, all right, I'm not gonna lose my cool. I never, ever, ever lost my cool to a customer. But I walked away and went into the back room where some other employees were.
Yeah, man, you got to get that shit out, man. Like that shit affects
And,
people.
and my boss is like, he's like, well, you can't just leave her out there. You got to go help the customer. I'm like, no, absolutely not. That is, to this day, she's one of the most vile human beings I've ever met. Not just because of the way she treated me, because of the way she treated everyone. But that's a longer story for another podcast.
I got a question for you. So
Yeah.
this is kind of about video games, but it can also be about software or hardware or whatever.
Yeah. We have veered.
No, that's good. No, we're right on track.
Right.
Would like would you consider like I want to figure out how to frame this question. Like, you know, say there's like a product that you like or you're like a fan of. or maybe you admire or you might be interested in or like whatever.
Hmm.
But maybe the person behind that piece of art or work or whatever technology is a piece of shit.
Mm.
Do you allow that to affect your enjoyment of said product or art?
Man, that's a big question because that question came up a lot during the whole Me Too movement, right? Like with the whole like Louis C.K. thing, right? Obviously, the guy's a piece of shit, but it doesn't mean that his stuff's not funny. But do you support the comedy even though you know he's a piece of shit? Can you watch his old stuff before you knew he was a piece of shit? Can you separate the art from the artist? That's a big question. I still struggle with that. I don't know the answer. Uh, I guess in my world, like for me personally, I would say it depends on what kind of piece of shit that person is.
Uh-huh.
Uh, like at this point, today on June 8th, 2020, if someone's a racist piece of shit, I'm fucking done. Like I don't care what you've got. I don't want you take it with you. Get the fuck out. Don't
Mm-hmm.
want it. Um, and I'm getting, it's like that way. I'm that way with misogyny too. I don't want that. I don't want that poison in my life. And if you are bringing that to me, even indirectly through your thing, I just don't want it. Just there's so much else out there. It gets it gets sticky when you have something that you can't get elsewhere. I don't have an example to give, but if you have something that you can't get anywhere else, how important is it to you? Is it more important than you know that shitty thing that person does, and is consuming that thing that you can't get elsewhere? Um, like, are you supporting that shitty person and letting them be shittier by supporting them? Yeah, it's
It gets deep, right?
sticky. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting. Like, that is a question I've kind of been asking myself a lot recently because, like,
Captain Tidbit says that's where you pirate.
yo, actually, that's a good point though. Like, I've definitely found myself like pirating things that I kind of don't want to find myself, accidentally supporting. Like, um, I don't have any examples on that specifically, but yeah, no, I think that's a good example of that. Like, um, I more recently, um, oh, uh, damn, I don't know if you've been following all the crazy shit that's been happening in the fighting game community. Um,
Mm-mm.
ooh, so talk about shit blowing up. So like, as far as like racism and misogyny and how they affect like a product or like an event or like a community of people. um the fighting game community has just kind of had a lot of accusations of like really gross sexual and predatory misconduct come out. Um and like it's gone up as high as like one of the co-founders of Evo kind of like being a bit of a like pedophile predator. um
Ew.
yeah. And so like um
Corn.
yeah, yeah, man, it's like I'm thankful that I don't have any close ties to these people, because like it's so fucking complicated. Like it reminds me a lot of back in Omaha, Nebraska. There's a huge alternative culture, like it's like nerd culture and like nerd events, tournaments, cosplay events, you know, body painting, raves, you name it. There was so much of that stuff in Omaha, and like there was a um, you know, a circuit of people that were always kind of connected to these events. But a lot of them are really really sketchy and predatory, and but they had so much pull in these circles, and a lot of them actually ran a lot of these events that like it was damn near impossible to weed them out, and there weren't enough people talking about it. And so it's like, okay, do you go to that event and choose to support it still, even though it's a lot of fun and your friends are gonna be there, but like awful things happen there. Um,
Hmm.
it it's kind of one of those things. So like, with the fighting game community, like, uh, this whole like COVID in the way like it rippled effect, like everything just like it was a perfect storm, man. Like, um, Evo, like apparently like the new Mortal Kombat wasn't gonna be like a grand stage game at Evo initially, and so but then COVID happens, and then the Evo's offline event gets canceled. Evo, by the way, obviously I'm pretty sure the chat knows, but Evo is the biggest fighting game tournament in the world. It's a whole bunch of fighting games, um, like are played at this event from people all around the world that travel to Las Vegas to compete. And if they are the best, they can win a lot of money. And it is a huge opportunity, especially in the age of like sponsorships and like there's so much money getting into the fighting game community. Like people are building careers off the fighting game community, right? And so like this is a big deal. All of this stuff is a big deal. So Evo Online, like the fighting game community, like we can't stop playing fighting games competitively just because we can't go to offline events, right? And everyone acts like they hate online, but online's here to stay. And so Evo going online was kind of an acknowledgement of that. Um, but so on Mortal Kombat 11 now all of a sudden finds itself kind of in like this huge kind of opportunistic spot because it has really good netcode, and you can't have an online tournament with a game with poor netcode when people from all around the world are going to be playing. And so Mortal Kombat becomes this premier spot for Evo Online. But then like things start getting weird. Like one of the like creators of or like founders or lead guys for one of these fighting games that was gonna be at this event made a strange joke on a stream about George Floyd and him being not being able to breathe, uh,
Hmm.
and that fucked his brand up. And one of his close friends is also a very famous Street Fighter or 2D fighting game player named Sonic Fox, whose career is like his video game career, um, and he found himself in a hot spot because those guys were friends, and he was still friends with this guy, and so he kind of was defending him and like defending his right to have an opinion as a black man, um, and but also still trying to stand for something. But this guy was now people were like, hey man, that was a really shitty thing that you said and did. What makes you think that that was okay? But you know but he still had a spot at Evo. um but then it turns out he was doing or he was saying really really creepy things to women about behind the scenes. And so like then he had a sexual assault kind of allegation like leveled against him that really really fucked up his brand. um, but then you started seeing that a whole bunch all over the place. Um, and like people just kind of have all of these awful stories. And then turned out one of the co-founders of Evo Online um, had his share of awful stories. And once that happened, everybody started pulling out of Evo. Like a bunch of commentators, a bunch of actual video game companies. Capcom pulled their games out. Tekken pulled their games out, or Namco pulled their games out. Um, NetherRealm
I mean, when
Studio.
you talk about it, it sounds like a cesspool.
Yeah, it's like, and what's crazy is like there's a ginormous chunk of the video game community that is fantastic. A lot of these guys have no idea that this stuff was going on, but like like in like this like people that like you know really take the community seriously and are willing to kind of give their time and effort and energy to the community um are kind of the most at risk because they're usually younger and they're usually impressionable, and like they're usually like looking for an opportunity to kind of get in those cool clubs sometimes, like meeting cool people at a tournament, and making a cool connection with like a tournament organizer, or like um you know staying in a house full of streamers, or like things that don't sound like bad ideas on paper, except so much of this like you know, a lot of these guys, like, you know, a lot of these, you know, a lot of people in the gamer community, you know, are used to weird shit anyway. Like they're used to kind of being outcasts of society. You know, like there's anime, you know, and hey, we watch hentai, and hey, there's furries, and hey, there's like you know these weird games and like these kind of like edgy things that are kind of accepted. And
Mhm.
so like you know, and it also comes from this weird era of like uh people that you know say awful things as jokes because they think it's jokes and they don't want to be checked for saying awful things. Like you know that kind of behavior has run rampant, and now we're in an age where we're no longer accepting it. And now we, you know, it created this opportunity, this perfect storm, right, of all of these brands to be tarnished by bad behavior. um
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that comedians have been talking about this shit for years. Like, what are you talking about? You know, shitty jokes about edgy things that, like, oh, well, come on, it's just a joke. Like, yeah, and I get that. Like, part of the appeal of some of those jokes is like that it makes people feel uncomfortable, right? But yeah, I think things are changing where more and more people are finding that less and less acceptable.
mm-hmm.
And people like Ricky Gervais, for example, has a hard time accepting that just because someone is offended by a joke. Like the way he thinks about it is, well, just because you're offended by the joke doesn't mean it's not a funny joke and I shouldn't tell it.
Mm,
Like, well, it doesn't mean that the people that laugh at your jokes aren't pieces of shit too.
right.
I'm not saying that he is a piece of shit. I'm just saying that it's like it's weird. I don't know how to process all this. I'm no expert on it.
It's interesting. Like, I don't want to go full Joe Rogan experience, but uh, but I think it's interesting. Like, I actually think comedians are. I think they play an oddly important role in a post Donald Trump world. Um, because I think, uh, I think that, like this idea of people being kind of all good or all bad, you know, just simply doesn't exist. And I think that somewhere along the line, people got scared to have conversations. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, man. I said this. I say this to my wife all the time that like yeah, no one's 100% bad. No one's 100% good. Like you just said, and it's like man, it's like the cop conversation too. Like you know, well, I don't know if I want to get into all that, but it's no cop. Like just no one person is 100% evil all the time.
mhm.
A bad cop can do good things, and a bad cop, or yeah, I forget. Yeah, it goes
Yeah,
both ways.
nah, but no, I'm with you. I'm with you. Like it's more nuanced than that. I think it's like this idea that there's no like um in an era where like I don't know, there's like bad to worse, right? Like, you know, worse is like, you know, we have like, you know, these kind of monsters in society that like have been allowed to be monsters, but like one of the biggest monsters in society, like one of the most dangerous men in like, you know, modern society effectively conned his way into that position. Um and and I say that not to get political, but to say that like the idea of like ultimate good and ultimate bad and being rewarded based on that kind of doesn't necessarily exist the way people think it does, right? Um, and so I think comedians play an interesting role because like they they def- they kind of define like where the line is in a sense. Like watching Dave Chappelle and you know his Sticks and Stones special, and it was at times so fucking grating. You know, like it's like
Mm.
even if you found it hilarious, like you know, there's a good chance like if you're not a complete piece of shit. If you're, moderately decent human being, some parts of that special probably made you relatively uncomfortable, to say the least, right? Like, you know, maybe some of these things are kind of that was kind of tough to listen to or whatever, but like, um, but at the but it started this kind of huge conversation about, like, there were so many important things that were kind of being said, and I guess, like, even though a lot of what he said was really offensive and should absolutely be talked about and absolutely should be scrutinized and criticized in the name of free speech, like, in the name of art, like, but also looking at the person as well, and like Dave Chappelle isn't a piece of shit, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
he says some awful things sometimes, but, like, this was also, the person that, gave us, like, the, Clayton Bigsby, the black KKK member, or, like, the player haters ball where they went back in time and shot slave owners, and, like, really crazy provocative sketch comedy, like, um that's always kind of pushing the line, like, so with comedians, right? Like, if they're pieces of shit, they're absolutely pieces of shit. If they say things that are offensive, it absolutely should be discussed. It needs to be discussed. But, like, uh but they're like, you kind of have to, we have to figure out where the line is, right? Where people will, like, like, what is it that people are actually pissed off about, or, like, where are the real issues? Like, are the real issues, like, an offensive joke, or, like, some dude getting lynched, or, like, you know or, like, an offensive joke, or someone actually being sexually assaulted, or, where are the lines? And, like, when is something, like, just like a good, you know artistic, when is something a good talking point? You know what I mean? Like, something even if it's bad, even if it's offensive, even if that guy is actually, like, maybe he isn't, a rapist or a predator or a murderer, or, like, anything weird, but maybe he is a piece of shit. Maybe he has a fucking terrible personality, and, maybe he's fucking, like, manipulative and awful, like, Kanye West, you know but, like, but does that make his work any less provocative?
You mean President West?
No, that's not what I mean. I promise you, that is not what I mean. I actually think that I think that I think that he's promoting an album. That's what I think.
Yeah, promoting an album and maybe helping Trump.
He actually came out recently and denounced his support of Trump, but now he's anti-Biden and also anti-vaccines, and, like, but but his album's coming out.
I read some of that, and that's like, yeah, there's a whole lot there that I gave. I'm a firm nope on a lot of
Exactly. Yeah, we're not unpacking it. It's just like, listen, Kanye, like, congratulations on your spiritual journey. Where's the music? Like,
Right.
because let me get an opinion on it so I can never listen to it again, because, like, too much Kanye is too much Kanye. But you know what, though, like, as far as like a character study, um if you look at, like, where Kanye's gone from when he started to where he is now, um like, the entire persona and the music that comes with that persona at that point in time, um is really fucking interesting. um
I have no doubt. No doubt he's an interesting person. I just can't stand listening to him.
yeah, well, yeah, and, like, no, totally, I get that 100%. And I like I've
Particularly when he's talking about running for president. It's like, just God, why?
Yeah, like, I think that his, like, and when he talks politics, like, I just don't think that he has the right people around him, and I personally think that his, like, his, venture into religion is kind of offensive, like, and, like, it's not necessary. I mean, to me, it's a little offensive, and it's, I mean, well, I don't want to say offensive, and I don't want to say inauthentic either, because I can't necessarily speak for anybody's spiritual journey. But it reminds me of Mace, who went from hip hop to you know, super ultra hyper religious to back to like, you know, hip hop artists. I think Kanye West maybe does a better job of like, actually Mace did this interesting thing. I say interesting, maybe more like provocative, where he actually denounced hip hop music when he went into religion, which isn't something that Kanye West is doing at all.
Mhm.
Like he actually has, you know, embraced hip hop as a way to kind of bring that messaging into his music, um, which is interesting. But you know, like right before he went full spiritual, he made a song with Lil Pump about porn stars, and and this was around the time he was also talking about running for president. Uh, and so like that's just it's interesting, like, you know, and like, and then this guy was like in support of somebody that, you know, effectively hates everything Kanye stands for except money and attention, you know. Um
Uh, yeah, those are two big similarities that they share, indeed.
mhm. Yeah. And like, you know, and that's really like, you know, like it's though that's what the I don't think Donald Trump sees like, you know, race as much as he sees class. Like, um, I think anything in regards to race about you, he probably like class probably reinforces it. So, you know, if you're poor, like the way he makes fun of like our old like AG, like he would call it like make fun of that dude about like being a you know a dumb country redneck, even though he has like a law degree. So it's just like he's just crazy like that. But like, you know, now Kanye has effectively denounced him. Now he's back in support of Black Lives, but he's also all of these other new things. He's like kind of embodied like a whole new type of like, you know, a whole new collection of traits that kind of goes with this new era of his music. Um, which for all intents and purposes, like, you know, he's not R. Kelly, so I'm not I'm not appalled by him, you know, like, and I respect that. You know, I respect that he still tries his best, you know, and he's not actually out here hurting people. I think like I think that he's maybe a little more dangerous on like a social influential level because
Right,
like
right. I mean, I think like he's, and I've seen other people do this in in my circles, where you know they find a religion and they go all in, and it's like it's everything all the time, and then they back off it a little bit, and not that they give it up, but that they like, oh wait, there, okay, there is more to life than just that thing, right? That can still be their guiding light or whatever it is for them. Um, but it's almost like the shiny new toy, you know, you want to play with it all the time and tell everybody about your new thing. And like, I found that, yeah, you know,
mm,
and then after a while, you're like, okay, now everybody knows that I'm into this. And now it can just be a thing that's part of my life, not something that I'm like, you know, proselytizing all the time.
right.
And so maybe that's where he's at, right? He's still in the excited kid with the new toy phase of his spiritual journey.
That's a hilarious way to put it. Yeah, man. It's interesting, man. Like the world is going in some interesting places, man. Like it's fun to like, you know, I just enjoy watching at the very least, like regardless of what my opinion is on them, like so long as people aren't like out actively hurting people, and also believe in redemption, right? So you know, like that means a lot. But so long as people aren't out here like actively hurting people, like it's interesting to see like kind of, you know, especially like creative people, you know, artists and, you know, actors, directors, whatever, writers, like J.K. Rowling is like, you know, for all intents and purposes, kind of problematic. Um,
Shooting herself in the foot repeatedly.
right. Yeah, but like, you know, I mean, that ain't gonna stop nobody from consuming her stuff, and you know, and it can sure as shit get a conversation started about what is and is not okay.
Mm. Yeah, so that's it. Brings back to your original question, right? Of can you separate the art from the artist if they do shitty things and are a shitty person or have shitty aspects of their personality, can you get past that and still consume the art? So if you take like J.K. Rowling for example, you know, you have this huge collection of work that is now like kids were raised on that, and there's like it's a it's now just canon, right? It's cultural canon for a lot of people. And does her saying these crappy things, does that change this body of work in any way? And I don't know. No, I mean it's the same. None of what she's saying now um, is in that work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the caveat being that if you go back to looking at that work through the lens of, oh, this person has these shitty opinions, and you go back to that work and you're like, oh, but I can now reinterpret this piece of art through that lens, and oh, now that is shitty. You know,
Yep.
it's like I think for a lot of in some ways it's the Confederate statue arguing. It's like a lot of people grew up seeing these statues and they're like, oh, these are honoring my ancestors. Well, now like they start to get a little more educated on where these things came from and why they're there. And you're like, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, you know what? That's not what they're there for. Yeah, you should take that down.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's something that like that level of objectivity, I think, is something that every type of person around the world could use. Like, a little bit of humility, like, even if, like, yeah, just a little bit of objectivity goes a long way. We are about hour and 45 minutes in. I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, what games have you been playing recently?
Oh yeah, I've been getting into Control. I think that's it. I've been trying to play a little more guitar and stuff. Spend time doing car stuff and guitar stuff. But when I am gaming, I've been getting into Control because I think I got it on a sale or something. And it's a cool game, man. You played it?
Not yet. I bought it, but it was I got it on a Epic. I got it for like $20. I couldn't pass it up for $20. I've just been waiting
Yeah,
for it.
yeah. Um, oh, incidentally, I just read that Watch Dogs 2 is going to be free on Sunday.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. So a game I heard a lot of mixed reviews about. I wouldn't, wasn't going to go spend money on it, but for free, I'll give that a try.
Hell yeah. I think it's worth it too. Like the Watch Dogs series is interesting because it's not quite as bad as its reputation might make you think.
Mm.
It just suffers from Ubisoft game syndrome, like it's just like they overhype their games like out the gate, or they overbloat their games. Like there's just something about their game that, like, when Watch Dogs first came out, like they immediately put a sour taste in people's mouths, right? Because like, they showed us what was essentially like a target render of what the game was going to be like. And it was in real time, but it wasn't representative of what we ended up getting. And like the E3 this E3 demo that they showed was like super cutting edge, right? Like the level of spectacle that demo showed, I think that we're just now getting to that level of spectacle in our games. Like it to me felt like grandiose, kind of in the same way like Resident Evil 3, like Nemesis breaking through walls and chasing you through the city, like that kind of grandiose. That's how this Watchdog demo felt. And it was beautiful, like, rainy city, and it's like, I forget, maybe it's like Chicago or something, and it's like, you can see all these beautiful reflections and like volumetric smoke everywhere, and like, headlights beaming, and like all this traffic, and you can like, use your phone to like, make these traps go off in traffic, and like, you can hack into everybody's, profiles and like see what they're about and steal money from them and stuff, like, which the original game ended up doing all that shit, but the way they showed it off initially was so captivating, and what we ended up getting was so hobbled, like especially like when the game released on PC and people found out like if you just tweak some settings, the game graphically gets really, really close to what the E3 demo showed, but they just purposefully stripped all that shit out to kind of like hamper like the PC version so the console versions would sell more. Um, it was strange, and so like they like the first Watch Dogs. It was, I mean, it was a solid game, honestly. Like it wasn't bad.
Yeah, I haven't played it. Uh, I got from reading reviews of it, I got the impression that it was one of these games that, like you said, promises a lot, kind of under delivers in some ways. Maybe tries to tell like a bigger story, and just kind of like the story feels a little thin instead. That kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like try to layer in some social commentary, but it's it's a little thin.
Yep. And so with Watch Dogs 2, they focused in, like, they kind of realized, like, there's now no visual bar to set, like we're head and shoulders in current gen, and so you don't have to blow us away with visuals. We know what the game looks like, and so we know how you can improve upon it as well. And so, they went into Watch Dogs 2 with really reasonable standards. And the story was also like, even though like the story was also like socially relevant, as far as like, being kind of like a sharp outcast type in a technological society, and kind of being aware of these issues, and like how, like being aware of how you can manipulate things based on technology. Like it still plays with that whole concept as a story, but it's a lot more kind of inviting and, I guess, hip. Like 2010 games are like really hip. Like it
Well,
was.
I read too that they made the character really like really enjoyable and like like a fun character rather than like so many games character is like such a hard ass or a total asshole or whatever and so they made this guy likable.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because Ubisoft, they don't normally do characters like that.
Hmm.
Like,
So I guess they're doing some kind of like announcement for what's it called, Watch Dogs Legion or something, the new one.
mhm.
So that's at Sunday, I think at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And so during that announcement event, Watch Dogs 2 is free.
Oh.
That's the the advertising.
That's cool. See, man, like, you know what, man? When Ubisoft gets it, when they're in their bag, they are in their bag. Like, I can name specific spots in Ubisoft's history over the last few console cycles where you can just tell they're on. Like, I feel like Assassin's Creed 2 and 3, I feel like they were on. I feel like with Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 5, they were red hot. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially Far Cry 3. Like, Far Cry 3 was so good, it kind of broke the industry. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if it created like the Far Cry 3 formula, like imagine every single Ubisoft game follows that formula that Far Cry 3 set, like as far as like this big open world, and you can like go to all these places to explore, but you have to unlock it, and you have to find maps, and you can kind of go at your own pace, and you go look at your map system, and there are a million different types of side quests that you can go to, and like you can like, yeah, that they nailed it with Far Cry 3, but now they just keep making games that do that. Like they just keep doing it.
Yeah. So so I'll probably try to pick that up and play that when I get through Control. Control's kind of cool. The combat's a lot of fun in that game. Because once you start unlocking some of your powers, you can be throwing stuff. You can kind of switch people to when their energy gets low. You can convert them to helping you. Kind of make them your minion.
I did not know that.
And it's really, and you have one weapon the whole game, one gun, the service weapon they call it, and but it can change forms. And so you can have I don't know if there are 4 or 5 different forms that it can take. So like one's like a shotgun style form, and one's like a automatic weapon, one's a pistol, and they each have their benefits, of course. It's typical video game stuff. Um, but you can only equip 2 forms to switch between at any given time. right? So it's like the shotgun and the automatic pistol kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can switch between them, and you don't have to collect ammo. It's unlimited ammo, but it has to recharge.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
And so what's cool is you go through and like you can use the gun, and you run out of ammo, and you have to wait for it to recharge. So in the meantime, you can be using your telekinesis to throw crap at your enemies.
Oh, that's right, because she has powers.
Mm-hmm. And then you're dodging, and you have to move because if you stand in one place too long, they start hucking grenades at you.
That game is sick, man. And you know what I like about that game? Like, you can see like the remnants of like Max Payne and Alan Wake, like just all throughout it. Like from the particle effects to like the dodgy combat, man. Like Remedy has really like they kind of defined stylish combat, really, like if you think about it.
Yeah, it's a cool game. It's funny playing that after playing Red Dead Redemption 2 because Red Dead is such like it's such a polished game, right? Like every single piece of it was thought through, every bit of the UI, like everything is just, everything had a team on it. And you can like going to a game like Control, still a really polished game, right? Still a lot of fun to play. Not buggy or anything like that, but there's just not the same, like it's just not the same polish and depth that something like Red Dead has. And so we were talking earlier about the balance of frame rate to graphics quality.
Mm-hmm.
So something like Red Dead, I veered more toward the graphic quality side and sort of let my frames like get go minimum on the frame rate, maximize my visual quality. In Control, I kind of go the other way. I'm like, all right, I'll sacrifice some visual quality for frames because of the style of combat. So,
That makes sense. And like that's one of those games, Digital Foundry on YouTube, they were showing off how good Control looks with like ray tracing on like a CRT monitor, because you can just put it at like, and it like with RTX they also do like this weird scaling, like AI image quality rendering thing, and so like you can just push super ultra high frame rates on these CRT monitors, which like have really low resolutions, and like a CRT monitor can render all those frames. And so they were just talking about how like kind of profound that experience was. Like they made it for a little bit, they made it worth me like going and seeing if I can find like a CRT monitor, till I realized that those motherfuckers is massively upcharged on OfferUp now because of that.
Oh yeah, and come on, who wants to play games in 4:3 aspect ratio?
I mean, you'd be surprised. Like those guys. Nerds. Let me shut up. I had to catch myself.
Listen, I grew up playing games on those freaking monitors. I had this giant Mitsubishi 21-inch diagonal fucking boat anchor sitting on my desk for a long time.
I was gonna say that had to weigh like 150 pounds.
Huge. I mean, like you put the thing on the desk and like the monitor, like there was barely room on the desk left for the keyboard in front of it because the thing was just so damn big. And it looked good, I guess. At the time, games were different at the time. They weren't like they are now. But man, flat screens changed everything. I never go back. Yep. Although I will tell you, when I got my first flat screen, it was some gateway thing, and oh my god, you know what I don't miss about that first one?
What's that?
Oh my god, the ghosting was horrible. I mean, now we've got high frame rate, crispy displays.
We're spoiled for all intents and purposes.
I love it. I love living in the future, dude.
Yeah, I know, it's great, right? And you can get like a dope monitor for like $100. Like $100 wouldn't get you shit like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine that, dude. Like remember, I used to go to Best Buy to get like, I would take my little Chuck E. Cheese money. I was like 15, 16 years old. Take my little Chuck E. Cheese money and go to Best Buy and just get anything to put in my little computer, a little compact computer with like a Celeron processor in it. And I would get like the shittiest graphics processor that nobody would recommend, but it was all my money could get, and it was upcharged because Best Buy was awful at that kind of stuff at the time. And like, like the good stuff costs like hundreds of dollars. Like I couldn't even imagine. And even like, like 5 or 6 years ago, like, the best hardware that was getting you really good image quality, you were paying $200, $300 for it. But like now you can spend $150 and you can be playing games 1080p 60 frames across the entire board and be getting better image quality than like your PlayStation 4s and like, your Xboxes. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. It's a good world to live in, and it just gets better.
Just keeps getting better, man. Just keeps getting better. All right, man. Well, that's all I got. We're pushing 2 hours now. So, I have to say this was a much better episode. Yo, shout out to the chat. I didn't hear any mention of an echo, and so I think that we're good on this one.
I'll take that.
I think we figured it out, man. Hell yeah. All right, well, yo, Scott, what do you have going on around the internet, man? Where can we find you?
Yeah, mostly I just got that YouTube channel going on, so check that out. Toy Box Garage on YouTube.
And we can also find you on Twitter at that same thing, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah. Nope. Oh wait, shit. I have a couple Twitter accounts, so you can check me out both at Toy Box Garage, and then I think the other one is 2Box Toy Box.
All right, sounds good. Hell yeah, check him out. He he posts a lot about either his YouTube channel or like if there's like interesting things in tech or interesting things in UX design. He keeps it pretty streamlined, but definitely show some support. Definitely follow that YouTube channel as well. I have to start linking that stuff, and actually, you know what? That's something I can link in the YouTube channel once I upload this to YouTube. And so
yeah, that'll be good. That'll be good. We'll get that sorted out.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, and Captain Tidbit, yo, you are absolutely right. We definitely need a podcast, command. And you know what? I think we might need like some I've been thinking about getting like some like VIP badges and like setting up some mods and stuff for my channel as well. Like, Tidbit, Scott, I know you obviously you don't recognize him, but he's one of he comes to my channel all the time. He's a good friend of mine, and so like I've been wanting to take, my Twitch to the next level. Like, you can put VIP badges on, like, you can literally make people VIP. It's just crazy, like, the amount of stuff you can do. Like, you can make the chat, like, subscriber only or, like, VIP only. And, like, it's a whole job, but it's interesting.
Yeah, man. All this stuff is endless.
Yeah, man. But,
I appreciate you being here and checking us out. It's awesome.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you for staying for the whole thing, man. I definitely appreciate y'all. I think we are going to go ahead and wrap it up. I might be on some video games later, but if not, I will see you guys tomorrow. Y'all know where to find me. If you are if you're new to the chat and to the stream, and you enjoy the content, please consider giving a follow or even subscribing if you want. Totally up to you. But if not, it's all good. I appreciate you sticking around nonetheless. We're going to go ahead and close this out. I appreciate y'all sticking around. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. We're going to be doing this, if we can, every Wednesday. You can also find the podcast. You can find it here on Twitch, obviously. It's going to be on YouTube as well. You can also find it on Apple Store, Google Play, and Spotify, and also on, I think, what is that? Podbean? I could be wrong. And there's also an RSS feed. You can go to therealraymills.com/the design critics to actually get all those links. I will have this episode. What's up?
At all the places.
All the places. We got to make sure everybody get access to it. We got to get the people what they want. Yo, MySpace actually is pretty cool. I kind of like some of the stuff that they've done. They missed their moment, but if we could upload this to MySpace, I would totally do it just because, like, I'm edgy like that. Yo, Captain Tidbit, episode 1 is mad glitchy. Please listen to it for as long as you can possibly fathom. Let me know what you think. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and close this out. Again, thank you for sticking around. I love you guys. Take care, and yeah, have a good